The incident and the summons, the morning sun of New Haven Colony, painted the agricultural domes in shades of gold and amber when Commander Thylos of the Zenari Empire arrived for what should have been a routine inspection. The colony, situated on the border between human space and the greater Galactic Consortium, hosted citizens from 12 different species. It was meant to be a symbol of cooperation, a place where the youngest species in the galaxy could prove they belonged among the stars. 9-year-old Marcus Chen was helping his mother in the community garden that morning, carefully tending to the hybrid vegetables that fed both human and alien residents. The boy had a gift for xenobotany, his teachers said, an unusual ability to understand what plants from different worlds needed to thrive. He was kneeling beside a row of Alterian bloom flowers, their bioluminescent petals pulsing gently in response to his touch. When the shadow fell over him, Commander Thylos stood 3 meters tall, her crystalline exoskeleton refracting light into prismatic patterns across the garden floor. The Zenari were silicon-based lifeforms, their bodies harder than diamond, their strength legendary even among the warrior races of the galaxy. She had come to inspect the colony's compliance with new consortium regulations that many humans felt were deliberately designed to limit their expansion. The boy looked up at her with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. In his hand he held one of the bloom flowers, its soft light reflecting in his dark eyes. The flower was from the restricted section of the garden, an area marked with signs in 47 languages stating that only authorized personnel could harvest the valuable plants. But Marcus couldn't read Zenari script yet, and the universal translator had been malfunctioning in this section for weeks. What happened next would be burned into the surveillance records that would later shock the entire galaxy. Without warning, without even a word of reprimand, Commander Thylos brought her massive crystalline arm down in a backhanded strike that connected with the child's head. The sound it made was like thunder in the peaceful garden. Marcus flew 15 feet through the air, his small body crashing through a hydroponic setup before slamming into the reinforced wall of the dome. The garden fell silent except for the slow drip of nutrient solution from the broken equipment. Marcus's mother, Dr. Elena Chen, dropped the tools she was carrying and ran to her son, her scream piercing through the morning air. Blood pooled beneath the child's head, mixing with the spilled growth medium to create a dark purple stain that spread across the white floor. Commander Thylos examined her arm. Noting a small smear of red blood on the crystalline surface, she made a sound that her species considered dismissive, a harmonic resonance that translated roughly to mild annoyance. The juvenile violated Consortium Regulation 77 Alpha. The response was within acceptable parameters for dealing with trespassers. She turned to leave, adding, "Humans coddle their offspring. Perhaps this will teach them proper respect for authority." The medical team arrived within minutes, but those minutes felt like hours to everyone present. Marcus was alive, but barely. His skull was fractured in 3 places, his brain swelling dangerously. The colony's medical facility worked around the clock to save him, using every piece of technology they had, calling in favors from passing ships for specialized equipment. For 72 hours, it was uncertain whether the boy would survive. When the news reached Earth, the response was immediate and visceral. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 50 years ago, and in that time they had been patronized, marginalized, and dismissed as primitive Deathworlders who had somehow achieved spaceflight, despite evolving on one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered. Earth, with its tectonic instability, its weather extremes, its countless predators and diseases, had produced a species that other races viewed with a mixture of pity and disgust. How could anything civilized come from such a place? But they had never truly understood what it meant to be shaped by such a world. Admiral Sarah Blackwood stood before the Galactic Assembly 7 days after the incident, her dress uniform pristine, her expression carved from stone. She was one of the few humans who had earned respect among the alien races, having negotiated the Treaty of Proxima and prevented 3 separate wars through diplomatic means. The assembly hall could hold 10,000 beings, and today it was filled to capacity. Word of why humanity had called an emergency session had spread, and everyone wanted to witness what many expected to be the humans' impotent rage. The assembly speaker, an ancient being from the ethereal collective whose species had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago, manifested as a shifting cloud of light at the center of the Great Hall. Ambassador Blackwood, it intoned, its voice resonating directly in the minds of all present. "You have called this emergency session regarding an incident at New Haven Colony. The matter has been reviewed." Commander Thylos acted within her authority as a consortium inspector. The juvenile was in violation of posted regulations. Blackwood's jaw tightened, but her voice remained level when she spoke. A 9-year-old child picking flowers was struck with enough force to fracture his skull. He spent 3 days in critical condition. He may never fully recover. And your response is that it was within acceptable parameters? The Zenari delegation, a group of 7 crystalline beings, each more imposing than the last, chimed in with harmonious condescension. The prime speaker of their group, a being whose crystalline form contained veins of pure energy, resonated. Perhaps if humans properly supervised their offspring, such incidents would not occur. The child survived. The matter is closed. Blackwood nodded slowly as if she had expected this response. She reached into her uniform pocket and withdrew a small device, placing it on the podium before her. "Very well. Then I am here to inform this assembly that humanity considers this matter far from closed. You have forgotten something important about us. Something you should have learned from our history, from our world, from the very fact that we survived and thrived on a planet you call a death world." She paused, looking around the vast hall, making eye contact with as many species as her human vision could process. "We protect our young with a ferocity you cannot comprehend. It is hardwired into our DNA, burned into our souls by millions of years of evolution on a world that taught us that those who do not protect their children do not survive to see tomorrow. You think because we attempt diplomacy first, because we smile and negotiate and compromise, that we are weak. You are about to learn otherwise." The ethereal collective's representative flickered with what might have been amusement. "You threaten violence in these sacred halls? How typically human. What will you do, declare war on the Zenari Empire? They could crush your entire fleet without effort." "No," Blackwood replied, her smile cold enough to freeze hydrogen. "We won't declare war. Wars have rules. Wars have boundaries. Wars can end in treaties and negotiations. What comes next is something far older. Something you've forgotten exists because you've been civilized for so long. You've forgotten what it means to be prey." She activated the device on the podium, and a hologram appeared showing a simple message in every known language. "The Shadow Legion has been activated. Justice will be delivered." The assembly erupted in confused murmurs. The Shadow Legion was a myth, a story told in the darkest corners of human space. Elite soldiers trained from childhood in techniques that violated 17 different consortium conventions on warfare. Humans who had allegedly given up their names, their identities, everything that made them individuals, to become living weapons devoted to humanity's protection. Surely they didn't actually exist. Blackwood walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the gradually quieting hall. She stopped at the doorway and turned back one last time. "Commander Thylos has 48 standard hours to turn herself in for trial under human law. If she does not, we will come for her. And to anyone who stands in our way, remember this. We evolved on a death world. We didn't just survive the monsters, we became them. And now one of those monsters hurt our child." The doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder, leaving 3,000 alien representatives in stunned silence. The Zenari delegation laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Let them come," the prime speaker resonated. "Our fortress moon is impregnable. 20 layers of energy shields, a fleet of 800 warships, and 50,000 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. If the humans are foolish enough to attempt something, it will be the last mistake their species ever makes. In the depths of space, aboard ships that didn't appear on any registry, that used technology reverse-engineered from a dozen different species and improved with human ingenuity, the Shadow Legion received their orders. 12 men and women who had given up everything to become humanity's hidden blade in the darkness. They didn't need speeches or motivation. They had all seen the video of Marcus Chen being struck down. They had all heard his mother's screams. The mission parameters were simple. Extract Commander Thylos alive. Minimize collateral damage where possible. Make it clear that harming human children would never again be considered acceptable parameters. Captain David Stone, though that hadn't been his real name for 15 years, looked at the holographic display of the Zenari Fortress moon. His team was already running simulations, finding weaknesses in what the Zenari thought was a perfect defense. They had 36 hours to plan and execute what everyone else would call impossible. But they were human. They were Deathworlders, and impossible was just another word for challenge. The hunt and the reckoning, the Zanari fortress moon orbited the gas giant Kelos Prime like a metallic pearl against velvet darkness. Its surface bristled with weapons platforms, sensor arrays, and the distinctive crystalline architecture of the Zanari Empire. For 3,000 years it had stood as an impregnable bastion, a symbol of Zanari superiority that had never been successfully breached. In the command center, surrounded by displays showing the positions of 800 warships, Commander Thylos felt perfectly secure. The humans were making noise, as lesser species often did when they felt slighted. Let them rage. The fortress moon's shields could withstand bombardment from an entire fleet for months. The warrior caste stationed here had trained for centuries in combat techniques that had conquered 100 worlds, and Thylos herself was considered one of the finest military minds in the Empire. Her crystalline form enhanced with combat modifications that made her nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. She was reviewing reports from other colonies when the first anomaly occurred. A sensor ghost lasting barely a microsecond on the outer perimeter. The technician who noticed it ran 3 diagnostics, found nothing wrong, and dismissed it as cosmic radiation interference. 12 seconds later, another ghost appeared, this time on a different sensor grid, but again so brief that by the time anyone looked, it was gone. Captain Stone's team had spent 18 hours analyzing every piece of data they could find about Zanari technology. They discovered something interesting. The Zanari's crystalline biology made them incredibly sensitive to certain harmonic frequencies. Their entire technology was based on resonance and vibration. It was elegant, powerful, and had one fatal flaw that no one had ever thought to exploit because no other species thought the way humans did. Every shield harmonic had a counter-frequency. Every sensor had a blind spot that lasted for nanoseconds during its refresh cycle. Every warrior's crystalline form could be disrupted by the right sonic pulse. The Zanari had never worried about these vulnerabilities because exploiting them would require split-second timing, inhuman reaction speeds, and the ability to process thousands of calculations simultaneously while under fire. It would require someone to be insane enough to fly a ship through a sensor refresh gap that lasted less time than a heartbeat, to modulate shield frequencies in real time while navigating an asteroid field of weapons platforms, to essentially dance through a minefield while solving quantum equations. In other words, it required humans. The Shadow Legion ship, a matte black vessel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, slipped through the fortress moon's defenses like smoke through a grid. 12 humans. Their neural implants synchronized, their bodies enhanced with technology that blurred the line between human and machine, moved as one organism. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Years of training had made them something more and less than human. A perfect fusion of their species' greatest strengths and most terrible capabilities. They entered through a waste disposal port 17 levels below the main command structure, a path that required them to navigate through processing chambers filled with industrial-grade acids that could dissolve most known materials. The Shadow Legion's armor, based on stolen Zanari technology and enhanced with human improvements, held. They moved through the fortress like ghosts, their presence masked by frequency generators that made them invisible to Zanari sensors. In the barracks, 2,000 Zanari warriors slept, their crystalline forms humming with the harmonics of their rest cycles. The Legion placed sonic disruptors at key points, devices that would render the warriors unconscious but not dead if activated. Humanity wanted justice, not genocide. The security office was their next stop. The Zanari on duty never saw them coming. Neural disruptors rendered them unconscious in seconds, and the Legion's tech specialist, a woman who had once been one of Earth's leading quantum physicists, began rewriting the fortress's security protocols. In minutes, she had created blind spots in the surveillance system, false logs that showed everything was normal and, most importantly, isolated the command center from the rest of the fortress. Commander Thylos was alone in her private chamber when they came for her. She had just finished her evening harmonics, the Zanari equivalent of meditation, when the door to her chamber simply ceased to exist, dissolved at the molecular level by technology the Zanari didn't know humans possessed. She rose to her full height, her combat modifications activating, energy coursing through her crystalline form. The human who entered was unremarkable by any standard. Average height, average build. His face hidden behind a tactical mask that revealed only cold blue eyes. But the way he moved, the absolute confidence in his stride, made Thylos's harmonic frequencies fluctuate with something the Zanari rarely experienced. Uncertainty. "Commander Thylos," Captain Stone said, his voice distorted by the mask's modulator. "By the authority of Earth's Shadow Legion, you are under arrest for the assault of Marcus Chen, attempted murder of a child, and violations of the Universal Sapient Rights Accord." Thylos laughed, the sound like a symphony of breaking glass. "You dare? I am Zanari. I am crystal-made consciousness. I have lived for 700 years and conquered worlds before your species discovered fire." She launched herself at the human with speed that should have been impossible for something of her size and density. Stone didn't dodge. He didn't need to. The sonic pulse that erupted from his armor hit Thylos at exactly the frequency that disrupted her crystalline matrix. She froze mid-leap, her form vibrating at a frequency that caused every crystal in her body to resonate in agony. She collapsed, her form flickering between solid and something approaching liquid. 700 years, Stone said, kneeling beside the fallen commander. "And in all that time, you never learned the most important lesson about humans. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. And when you hurt our children, we fight with a fury that would make your gods weep." The extraction took 17 minutes. By the time the Fortress Moon's garrison realized what had happened, the Shadow Legion was already gone, leaving behind only a message on every display screen: "Justice will be served." The Fortress Moon's defenses, its 800 warships, its 50,000 warriors, had been completely bypassed. Not a single shot had been fired. Not a single life had been lost. But the message was clear. Humanity could reach anyone, anywhere at any time. The trial was conducted on Earth, broadcast to every corner of human space and, through diplomatic channels, to the entire Galactic Assembly. Commander Thylos, secured in restraints that prevented her from accessing her harmonic abilities, was forced to watch the full medical report of Marcus Chen's injuries. She saw the surgery footage, heard the mother's testimony, watched the boy learning to walk again with mechanical assistance, because the damage to his motor cortex might never fully heal. The human justice system, unlike the Zanari's might-makes-right approach, focused on rehabilitation and restitution. But for crimes against children, there was no rehabilitation possible. The sentence was life imprisonment in a facility designed specifically for crystalline beings, where Thylos would spend the remainder of her considerable lifespan contemplating what she had done. But the real message came when Admiral Blackwood returned to the Galactic Assembly, this time accompanied by Marcus Chen himself. The boy walked with a slight limp, one hand held by his mother, the other clutching a small pot containing an Alterian bloom flower, the same type of flower he had been picking when Thylos struck him. The assembly hall fell silent as the small family made their way to the center. Marcus, despite everything he had endured, looked around the vast hall with the same curious wonder that had gotten him into trouble in the first place. When he spoke, his voice amplified by the hall systems, every being present leaned forward to listen. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 9 years old. When I grow up, I want to be a xenobotanist and help plants from different worlds grow together. The alien who hurt me is gone now, but I don't want anyone else to be hurt either. My mom says that being strong doesn't mean hurting people who are smaller than you. It means protecting them. So I want to give this flower to the assembly, so you can remember that even small things can grow into something beautiful if you take care of them, instead of stepping on them." He placed the pot on the central podium, the flower's bioluminescent petals pulsing gently in the vast hall. Then he turned and walked back to his mother, his small figure dwarfed by the enormous space and the thousands of alien eyes watching him. Admiral Blackwood took the podium, her expression softer than it had been during her last visit, but no less determined. "Humanity proposes a new addition to the Galactic Charter. We call it the Marcus Protocol. Any act of violence against a child of any species will be met with immediate intervention by a joint task force. The perpetrator will be tried according to the laws of the victim's species. And if any government or organization attempts to shield those who harm children, they will answer to all of us." She paused, looking directly at the Zanari delegation. "We are Deathworlders. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. But do you know what that really means? It means we learned that the only way to survive was to protect each other, especially the weakest among us. Our children are our future, and we will burn the stars themselves to keep them safe. But we would rather teach them to grow gardens than to wage wars. The choice of which lesson they learn is yours. The vote was unanimous. Even the Zanari, shaken by how easily their greatest fortress had been penetrated, voted in favor. The Marcus Protocol became the first universal law proposed by humanity to be adopted without revision. As the Chen family left the assembly hall, Marcus turned back one last time to look at his flower on the podium, its soft light a beacon in the political chamber. He didn't understand the full significance of what had happened, but he knew something important had changed. The scary alien who had hurt him was gone, and maybe now other kids, human and alien alike, would be safer. The Shadow Legion returned to the darkness, their existence never officially confirmed but never again doubted. They became humanity's warning to the galaxy. We will try diplomacy first. We will seek peace and cooperation. We will share our knowledge and our friendship freely. But harm our children, and you will learn why we are called Deathworlders. Not because we worship death, but because we survived it, mastered it, and turned it into a tool to protect life. The fortress moon of the Zanari Empire added new defenses after the incident, but everyone knew it was merely a gesture. If humans could infiltrate it once without firing a shot, they could do it again. The real defense was simpler: never give them a reason to. And in a small garden on New Haven Colony, Marcus Chen continued to tend his flowers, teaching other children, both human and alien, how to make things grow. His slight limp remained a permanent reminder of that day, but it didn't slow him down. If anything, it made him more determined to bridge the gap between species, to prove that understanding could bloom even in the darkest soil. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They were not warmongers or conquerors. They were gardeners and protectors, teachers and healers, but threatened their young, and they would remind you why even the monsters on their death world learned to fear the darkness. Because sometimes the darkness looked back, and it had human eyes.